teeth in a hunger shout.
2 chapters today, and they read like a long obituary. See, Miriam dies and is buried. Aaron dies on the mountain and his vestments transferred to his sons in front of the people. The whole leadership generation that walked Israel out of Egypt is being closed out. And in the middle of those deaths, Moses himself fails. He strikes a rock when he was told to speak to it. And the Lord tells him he will not enter the promised land either. And then, the very next chapter, fiery serpents come into the camp, and Moses lifts a bronze serpent on a pole, and anyone who looks upon it lives. The simplest gospel in the entire Pentateuch. Look and live. Now, 1,000 years later, Jesus will pick up this exact image in John 3 and apply it directly to himself. And the Book of Mormon will mourn that some Israelites refused to look because the way was just too easy. So today, we walk from death to death, through one of Moses' hardest failures and into the most explicit type of Christ in the entire Old Testament. So, welcome back to Come Listen With Me. I'm Ricky Black, aka Elder Eleazar, and today is our Thursday, May 7th of 2026 reading for Numbers chapters 20 and 21. This is part of our ongoing Come Follow Me study of the Old Testament. So it is 2 long chapters with a lot of pivot points from Miriam, the rock, Edom, Aaron, the fiery serpents, the brazen serpent, and the first conquests. So there's a lot of ground here to cover. But before we get into that, let us start by just acknowledging our Father in heaven. Give all thanks and praise to him for leaders who carried Israel through 40 years and laid down their robes when the time came. To thank him for the gift of being able to look up, to lift our eyes, and to live, even when we have been bitten by what our own choices brought into our own camps. And most of all, thank him for the one brazen serpent prefigured, the one lifted up that all who look might live. And as we read Moses striking the rock and Aaron climbing Hor and the bronze figure on the pole, let's strive to recognize how easy it is to do God's work in the wrong way, and how merciful it is that even our failures do not derail his promises. So, let's approach today with reverence, thanksgiving, and open hearts, and learning, all with Jesus in our heart and his name on our lips. So, let's begin. And as always, we don't want to read passively, just checking off boxes. We want to read with intent. So here's a few questions to keep our attention focused as we go through the scriptures today. All right. So first question. Moses strikes the rock when he was told to speak to it. So pay attention to exactly what Moses says before he strikes. Must we fetch you water out of this rock? Watch the pronouns, right? What is Moses claiming, and why does the Lord treat that small claim as the disqualifying offense? Next. Numbers chapter 21, verse 8 and 9, they give us the brazen serpent on the pole. So watch what the Lord requires of the bitten Israelites. Not the work, not effort, just looking. And see, in this passage, what does that simplicity teach us about how the gospel actually operates? Finally, Aaron's death in chapter 20 is a deeply choreographed liturgical moment. So pay attention to who climbs the mountain, what is transferred, and where the act takes place, right? Because the priesthood, it does not die with Aaron. So watch how the text shows us that and how that happens. All right. With those in mind, let us go ahead and begin. So again, we're going to be here in chapter 20 of Numbers. And we're going to start actually just with verse 1. Then came the children of Israel, even the whole congregation, into the desert of Zin in the first month. And the people abode in Kadesh, and Miriam died there and was buried there. Right there. Opens just that single verse that closes out a very long story of a very important woman. So Israel came into the wilderness of Zin in the first month. They abide in Kadesh, and Miriam dies. She's buried. That's the entire mention, one verse, right? And she is a prophetess who led Israel in song at the Red Sea, the sister who watched over the basket and the bulrushes, right? She is the woman who was stricken in chapter 12 with leprosy and prayed for it in that same breath, right? Immediately Moses is praying for her. But she finally dies here in Kadesh, and the text just moves on. But this is actually an important bit of placement. It's easy to rush past it. See, Miriam dies in the first month. That's the same month as the Passover. So the prophetess of Exodus dies on the calendar of the Exodus. Israel is being told something. The whole generation that came out is being closed out, and the closing has begun with the woman who sang of their deliverance after they crossed the Red Sea on dry ground. Let's move on to verses 2 through 6. And there was no water for the congregation, and they gathered themselves against Moses and against Aaron. And the people chode with Moses and spake, saying, Would God that we had died when our brethren died before the Lord. And why have ye brought up the congregation of the Lord into this wilderness, that we and our cattle should die there? And wherefore have ye made us to come up out of Egypt to bring us into this evil place? It is no place of seed, or of figs, or of vines, or pomegranates, neither is there any water to drink. And Moses and Aaron went from the presence of the assembly unto the door of the tabernacle of the congregation, and they fell upon their faces, and the glory of the Lord appeared unto them. All right. So immediately the people complain. I mean, what did we expect, right? There's no water for the congregation. And everything here is depressingly familiar. I mean, that is the scriptures. Everything's on repeat, so we got to pay attention to it. So they gather against Moses and Aaron. They wish they had died with their brethren before the Lord, and they accuse Moses of bringing them out of Egypt to die in an evil place again. But again, the geography here, right? They're still using the same script the wilderness generation used back in chapter 14, right? Now, the wilderness generation, the people the text is now calling their brethren, has nearly all died out, right? So this is the next generation, and they're repeating their parents' sins almost word for word, right? The only difference is not they can go back to Egypt because they don't really remember Egypt, right? They're just woeful about the fact that they've come here to die. Moses and Aaron, they go to the door of the tabernacle, fall on their faces, and the glory of the Lord appears. So God's still with them, even with all the complaining and murmuring. All right, let's continue on through verses 7 through 11. And the Lord spoke unto Moses, saying, Take the rod, and gather thou the assembly together, thou and Aaron thy brother, and speak ye unto the rock before their eyes. And it shall give forth his water, and thou shalt bring forth to them water out of the rock. So thou shalt give the congregation and their beasts drink. And Moses took the rod from before the Lord as he commanded him. And Moses and Aaron gathered the congregation together before the rock. And he said unto them, Hear now, ye rebels, must we fetch you water out of this rock? And Moses lifted up his hand, and with his rod he smote the rock twice, and the water came out abundantly, and the congregation drank, and their beasts also. All right. So the Lord gave Moses an exact instruction. Take the rod, gather the assembly, speak to the rock before their eyes, and it will give forth water. Speak. The Hebrew is davartem, right? You shall speak. The verb of a dialogue of address, right? So no striking, no violence. The instruction is unambiguous. But Moses gathers the people, and he's, watch what he says before he acts. He says, Hear now, ye rebels, must we fetch you water out of this rock? So there's that pronoun. It's important in there. Must we fetch you water? The we is Moses and Aaron, not the Lord. So Moses has shifted the credit. He is presenting himself as the source of water. And in his own frustration with the people, which again is understandable frustration after 40 years of this and just seeing the same complaints on repeat, he just picks up the rod and strikes the rock twice. So water comes out anyway, right? The Lord is faithful even to a faithless gesture, and the congregation drinks. Now, pausing there for a moment, I think that's important. I think in life, and we see this across all sorts of different denominations, right? Not just here in the church, but other churches as well. We tend to look at certain leaders and we want to focus on some of their failings, or we want to say maybe they didn't do something right. And somehow that can dissolve faith or get us to abandon things. But I think this bit with Moses tells us something. Our leaders, even the best leaders, right? They can make mistakes. They can not do things perfectly at times. Sometimes because they're tired, sometimes they're frustrated, or maybe they just don't understand something. But in the end, the takeaway here is that the Lord is still going to provide, right? He's not going to deny things for his people. So even when our leaders make mistakes or they're not at their best, right? Or maybe they don't just do something perfectly, we can still have faith in their leadership and faith that Christ is at the head of the church, still providing those blessings for us regardless. And that is a very positive thing for me to take away from all this. Okay, so continuing back on with Moses here, right? So again, he's committed an offense. And it's not really about hitting versus speaking, although, he didn't follow the orders, right? It really is about that one pronoun. Moses claimed credit for what only God could do. And he did it in front of the assembly at the moment when the next generation really needed to learn the source of provision, right? That it was the Lord and not the prophet. And that simple mistake is actually a very, very big mistake, right? We need to always be giving glory to the Lord for what he does. Even if he does it through us, it's still him doing it. Okay. Verses 12 and 13 here. And the Lord spake unto Moses and Aaron, because ye believed me not to sanctify me in the eyes of the children of Israel, therefore ye shall not bring this congregation into the land which I have given them. This is the water of Meribah, because the children of Israel strove with the Lord, and he was sanctified in them. So the Lord's response, it's pretty severe, and it's immediate, right? Because ye believe me not to sanctify me in the eyes of the children of Israel, therefore ye shall not bring the congregation into the land which I have given them. So the charge is not that Moses lost his temper. The charge is that he failed to sanctify the Lord in the eyes of the people. Now, to sanctify means to set apart as holy, right? To demonstrate the difference between the Lord and everything else. Moses' weed that was right in there, he put a barrier between the people and recognition of all the provision was from God alone. So the consequence, seems pretty staggering, but the man who pleaded with God for 40 years on behalf of his people, right, who refused to offer of a clean nation in chapter 14, wiped them out and get, new, right? He doesn't get to the promised land either, right? So the whole 40-year sentence on the wilderness generation now applies to the prophet himself as well. And the place, it's named Meribah, which means contention or strife, right? This is the water of contention. This is the water of strife, because the children of Israel strove with the Lord and he was sanctified in them. Now, also looking at the word sanctified, it's the same root verb as the one that Moses failed at, right? So the Lord sanctified himself in the encounter, even when his prophets did not. So mercy is built into the place name. The water flowed despite the strike. Let's go on to 14 through 21. And Moses sent messengers from Kadesh unto the king of Edom. Thus saith thy brother Israel, thou knowest all the travail that hath befallen us, how our fathers went down into Egypt, and we have dwelt in Egypt a long time, and the Egyptians vexed us and our fathers. And when we cried unto the Lord, he heard our voice, and sent an angel, and hath brought us forth out of Egypt. And behold, we are in Kadesh, a city in the uttermost of thy border. Let us pass, I pray thee, through the country. We will not pass through the fields, or through the vineyards, neither will we drink of the water of the wells. We will go by the king's highway, and we will not turn to the right hand nor to the left hand until we have passed thy borders. And Edom said unto him, Thou shalt not pass by me, lest I come out against thee with the sword. And the children of Israel said unto him, We will go by the highway, and if I and my cattle drink of thy water, then I will pay for it. I will only, without doing anything else, go through on my feet. And he said, Thou shalt not go through. And Edom came out against him with much people and a strong hand. Thus Edom refused to give Israel passage through his border, wherefore Israel turned away from him. So Moses, he sends an ambassador to the king of Edom, right? He invokes the kingship, thus saith thy brother Israel, because Edom is descended from Esau, Jacob's twin, right? So he's one of the tribe. And it's a very courteous message. Like, we will pass through your land, will not turn aside in your fields or vineyards, right? They're basically saying, we just want to pass through and we won't do anything to take from this land. We just want safe passage. But weirdly enough, Edom just refuses twice. And the second refusal comes with an army. So Israel turns away from him. And this, it's a quieter loss in numbers, right? And again, it's easy to just move on from it. But it's important. See, Israel and Edom, they are family, right? The brother kingdom shuts the door. So Israel could have forced the issue. The army, I mean, it was real, it was large, but so was the cloud and the fire and the rod. Like, they had God on their side. But still they don't, right? They choose peace and they turn away. So the chapter here is also teaching restraint. So sometimes faithfulness means not asserting what could be asserted. The road to Canaan now has to be the long way around through Moab and Edom's southern flank. Okay, let's do 22 to 29. And the children of Israel, even the whole congregation, journeyed from Kadesh and came unto Mount Hor. And the Lord spake unto Moses and Aaron in Mount Hor by the coast of the land of Edom, saying, Aaron shall be gathered unto his people, for he shall not enter into the land which I have given unto the children of Israel, because he rebelled against my word at the water of Meribah. Take Aaron and Eleazar his son, and bring them up unto the mountain Hor, and strip Aaron of his garments, and put them upon Eleazar his son. And Aaron shall be gathered unto his people, and shall die there. And Moses did as the Lord commanded, and they went up into the Mount Hor in the sight of all the congregation. And Moses stripped Aaron of his garments, and put them upon Eleazar his son. And Aaron died there on the top of the mountain. And Moses and Eleazar came down from the mount. And when all the congregation saw that Aaron was dead, they mourned for Aaron 30 days, even all the house of Israel. So the journey moves to Mount Hor on the border of Edom, and the Lord tells Moses what happens next. Aaron will be gathered to his people. He will not enter the land because of his failure at Meribah, and he will die on the mountain. And here's the whole moment, right? Take Aaron and Eleazar his son, bring them up to the mountain, strip him of his garments, and put them on Eleazar. And Aaron shall be gathered unto his people and shall die there. So it's a very tender, liturgical scene. Moses, Aaron, and Eleazar climb the mountain together in the sight of all the congregation. The whole camp, they're watching from below. And on the mountain, Moses, he transfers those vestments. The breastplate with the 12 stones, the ephod with the names on the shoulders, the mitre with the gold plate that says Kodesh Lachwe, right? Holiness to the Lord. And each one comes off Aaron and goes on to Eleazar. So again, it's a liturgical transfer, right? It's public and very precise. And then that's when Aaron dies, right there on the top of the mountain. And Moses and Eleazar come down from the mountain. And what does the camp see? 3 men climb up, 2 came down. And the second one is wearing the high priestly garments. The priesthood did not die with Aaron. Right? It was passed on. So the fire stays sound even when the bearer is laid down. But Israel does mourn for Aaron for 30 days. But the covenant does continue. And we start to see sort of the importance of a priestly line of succession here, of power and authority from God to do as God has requested, to speak on behalf of God, because that was his role. Let's move on into chapter 21 now. We're going to start with the first 3 verses. All right. And when King Arad the Canaanite, which dwell in the south, heard tell that Israel came by the way of the spies, then he fought against Israel, and took some of them prisoners. And Israel vowed a vow unto the Lord, and said, If thou wilt indeed deliver this people into my hand, then I will utterly destroy their cities. And the Lord hearkened to the voice of Israel, and delivered up the Canaanites, and they utterly destroyed them and their cities. And he called the name of the place Hormah. All right, so this chapter, it's a quick victory. King Arad, the Canaanite, hears Israel's coming. He attacks. He takes them captive. Israel makes a vow to the Lord, and the Lord delivers, right? Place is called Hormah, which actually means destruction, right? And devotion to the Lord. So, now keep in mind that the victory is going to be brief, but it's important to keep it, kind of focused here, because what comes next is a setback that doesn't feel earned. Like they hearkened to the Lord, they followed through, they witnessed that he was leading them, but now things are about to go south. Let's look at verses 4 through 9. And they journeyed from Mount Hor by the way of the Red Sea, to compass the land of Edom. And the soul of the people was much discouraged because of the way. And the people spake against God and against Moses, Wherefore have ye brought us up out of Egypt to die in the wilderness? For there is no bread, neither is any water, and our souls loatheth this light bread. And the Lord sent fiery serpents among the people, and they bit the people, as much people of Israel died. Therefore the people came to Moses and said, We have sinned, for we have spoken against the Lord and against thee. Pray unto the Lord that he take away the serpents from us. And Moses prayed for the people. And the Lord said unto Moses, Make thee a fiery serpent, and set it upon a pole. And it shall come to pass that every one that is bitten, when he looketh upon it, shall live. And Moses made a serpent of brass, and put it upon a pole. And it came to pass that if a certain serpent had bitten any man, when he beheld the serpent of brass, he lived. Okay, so there's just a couple of verses, but man, there is a ton to talk about here. I probably should have just made this its own separate deep dive video, but so bear with me because this is going to be fun. So what are we seeing, right? The people, they're moving out from Mount Hor by way of the Red Sea. They're going around the land of Edom, right? And the soul of the people was much discouraged. Again, so the Hebrew is va tixar nefesh ha'am, right? So it means that the soul of the people grew short. I mean, they're fatigued, they're demoralized, they've just buried Aaron, and they're taking the long way around because Edom shut the door on them. All right, the Canaanite people attacked them, and they had to deal with a few things there. So in their fatigue, they're speaking out against God and against Moses. Wherefore have you brought us out of Egypt to die in the wilderness? For there is no bread, neither is any water, and our soul loatheth this light bread. So there that is, disdain for the miracles of God. They keep calling the manna, kelachel, right? Which means worthless, light, and contemptible. Just, again, repeating the patterns of their parents. This is the bread of angels, right? It's become contemptible to them. They're despising the provision that God provided. So the Lord sends fiery serpents, and these are nachashim hasarafim, right? Burning serpents among the people. And yes, many die. Okay, so sort of a quick aside. Well, maybe not quick, but an important one. So the Hebrew there, nekashim ha-seraphim, right? Serpents, the burning ones or shining ones. It's the same root as the seraphim angels of Isaiah 6. In fact, it's the same word, right? Now, often the ancients used fire as a way of expressing bright light because fire is what they used for light. So the burning ones are also the bright ones or the shining ones. But more on that connection in just a moment, right? So let's get into, in Isaiah 14, a seraph is a flying viper. And in Isaiah 30, it's paired with the viper as a creature of the desert. And in Isaiah's whole throne room vision, the seraphim are the same category of being, right? They're burning, serpentine, and winged. Now, this isn't some fringe speculation that I'm going down here either, right? Archaeologists, they've pulled out hundreds of seals out of Judahite soil from Isaiah's century, and they are covered in winged serpents, right? It's nearly identical to the Egyptian ureas, right? Which is like the rearing cobra. And that's the visual world that Isaiah was working in. So when he says a seraph flew to him with a coal from the altar, his original audience would have known what that meant. They would have seen a flying serpent, right? A shining serpent. So hold that image in your mind. And let's go back to Numbers 21. The Lord tells Moses to make a seraph of bronze and lift it up on a pole. So anyone who looks at it lives. So that's not just a snake on a stick, right? There's very deliberate imagery of a fiery, bright, supernatural throne room creature. And it's raised up as the focal point of healing. Now, Jesus knew exactly what he was doing in John 3 when he says, as Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, even so must the Son of Man be lifted up. And Nephi knew it too. Alma knew it. Like, the typology isn't like some, just flannel board snake, right? It's one of the most fearful images in the Hebrew Bible. It's transfigured into the looking point of salvation. This also goes to potentially explaining what the serpents biting the Israelites may have been. So let's talk about Lucifer for a moment. See, in Isaiah 14, that whole passage, the Lucifer reference comes from a single verse, Isaiah 14:12. It's addressed to the king of Babylon. Now, the Hebrew is Helel ben Shachar, right? Shining one, or son of dawn, or day star, son of the morning. Now, Helel comes from the root Hel, right? Meaning to shine or to praise. It's the same root behind hallelujah, right? But Jerome rendered it into Latin as Lucifer or light bearer, and the King James just kept that as a proper name. But in Hebrew, it's a title or sort of an epithet, right? Not necessarily a name. And the passage is explicitly a taunt song, right? Against the Babylonian monarchs. It's not a narrative about a fallen archangel. But the Satan identification is a later Christian reading layered on figures from Origen and Tertullian. It's okay. But here's where it gets interesting for our seraphim to question. If you look at what Isaiah 14 says just a few verses later, verse 29, in the same chapter is part of the same oracle complex against foreign nations. Rejoice now, thou, O Palestina. because the rod of him that smote thee is broken. For out of the serpent's root shall come forth a cockatrice, and its fruit shall be a fiery flying serpent. So that fiery flying serpent is seraph me ophef, right? A flying seraph. Isaiah is using serpentine or fiery imagery as a category of the supernatural adjacent threat in the very same chapter where he calls the king of Babylon Halel ben Shachar, right? So the conceptual world is it's consistent here, what we're seeing. Bright, burning, winged, dangerous, hubristic beings that overreach and fall. Now, there's a recognized scholarly conversation that goes on here about how Isaiah 14 draws on Canaanite and broader and Western Semitic mythology, specifically a day star or dawn identity who attempts to ascend the divine mountain and they're cast down, right? And a bunch of the Ugaritic texts, they have a figure named Athtar who tries to take Baal's throne and fails. Now, the shining one who falls is a type of near ancient, Eastern imagination that overlaps semantically with the burning one who flies. So you even have two adjacent Hebrew categories: seraph, burning one; serpentine, winged, fiery, can be either throne attendants or an instrument of judgment, like we see in Numbers 21, right? And Helel, shining one, luminous, celestial, associated with dawn, capable of hubris and fall. Both are bright, both are dangerous, both occupy that sort of liminal supernatural space that doesn't fit cleanly into later bits of like angel-demon binary that we have in modern Christianity. And the Septuagint translators, they sometimes blurt it even further, right? The Greek for Numbers 21, serpent is Opheus. Hold on a second. Opheus, Taus, Tentatauntus. Anybody who speaks Greek, correct me on that. But that's how it reads in some of the traditions. But the earlier Greek and it's Latin, right? It glosses on the seraph and it drifts towards shining rather than burning because, again, the whole semantic field, it just overlaps. That's what they're talking about. So where does this whole popular tradition get all this from, right? Well, the full Lucifer is fallen archangel as serpentine synthesis, it really comes together in the Second Temple period and early Christianity. The wisdom of Solomon in 224, it identifies the Eden serpent with the devil. And the life of Adam and Eve, which is a 1st century CE text, right? It tells the story of Satan's fall from heaven through pride. And then finally we get Revelations 12:9 that fuses all that together, right? The great dragon, the old serpent called the devil and Satan. So by the time you get Origen's reading of Isaiah 14, all the threads, shining one, fallen one, serpent, adversary, they've been threaded together into this single figure, right? Now, I know there's a lot of information, so let's bring this full circle, right? There's a definite tie to divine or angelic beings being portrayed as serpents and fiery or shining ones at that, right? That's what we've just been discussing. So when I read these verses from Numbers, I often see the people being vexed by demons, right? Those fallen angels that may appear as shining ones, but strike at you, trying to take your life. But the bronze serpent, right? The bronze seraph, which is Christ, it can easily save you from those demons if you but look upon him. So maybe I'm just connecting dots that aren't here, but it's something that's been on my mind for years now. So you can read this just explicitly as it is. There are these serpents whose sting, when they bite you, the venom feels like burning, so they're burning ones. They're getting bit by all these cobras. And the raised, bronze serpent can heal you. It can be just that literal. I think it also can be just as literal that this is just showing how the Lord just let the demons come in. Hey, you want to start doubting me? I'm going to let these demons, these fallen ones, right, come in, and I'm going to let them have at you. I've removed my protections. But if you want it again, you just have to look to the bronze serpent, right? Look to Christ, look to the Lord, look to Jehovah. That's it. Just look back to me and you'll be okay. But if you don't, I'm done. I'm just going to let the demons have at you. Literally. Okay. Thanks for going on this little trip with me. But let's get back to the regularly scheduled commentary on these verses. So what do the people do here, right? They're being attacked by these snakes or demons, however you want to look at it. And they do repent, right? They come to Moses. They confess, we've sinned, for we have spoken against the Lord and against thee, right? Pray unto the Lord that he take away the serpents from us. So Moses, he prays. And the strange remedy is that the Lord doesn't take the serpents away, right? Hey, I'm going to still let the demons have at you. he gives Israel a way to live in the middle of them, right? Kind of reminds me of the whole live in the world but be not of it. He says, make thee a fiery serpent, set it upon a pole, and it shall come to pass that everyone that is bitten, when look uponeth it, shall live. So Moses makes that serpent of brass. He puts it on a pole, and it came to pass that if the serpent had bitten any man, it's exactly what the Lord promised. Look on the serpent and live. And that's all that's required. No work, no penance, no nothing. Just prayer and look to the serpent. Lift your eyes and see what God has lifted up, and you will live. That's simple. It's the simplest gospel in the entire Old Testament. And in the New Testament, it knows it, right? Jesus, he says, was it John 3? As Moses lifted the serpent in the wilderness, even so must the Son of Man be lifted up. Whatsoever believeth in him should not perish but have eternal life. So Christ is identifying himself directly with the bronze serpent. The pole is the cross. The look is faith. And the life, it's eternal. That's it. Look to Christ and live eternally. The Book of Mormon, it picks this up at least 3 times. I mean, Nephi says in 1 Nephi 17 that Israel was bitten and could not look because the way was too easy. Alma, in Alma 33, says many were lost because they would not look. And Helmet 8 names it again, right? The Book of Mormon mourns the people who refused the simplicity of the request. And that's the doctrine. The look itself was the gospel. The lifted thing was the answer to the bitten state, right? Salvation by looking. The serpent means, in the fall, means that all men will die. But by looking to Christ, you can be redeemed and you can live. All right, let's move on. Verses 10 through 20. And the children of Israel set forward and pitched in Oboth. And they journeyed from Oboth and pitched in Ibrahim, in the desert where before Moab towards the sunrising. From thence they removed, and they pitched in the valley of Zered. And from thence they removed and pitched on the other side of Arnon, which is in the wilderness that cometh out of the coasts of the Amorites. For Arnon is the border of Moab, between Moab and the Amorites. Wherefore it is said in the books of the wars of the Lord, what he did in the Red Sea and in the brooks of Arnon, and at the stream of the brooks that goeth down to the dwelling of Ar, and lieth upon the border of Moab. And from thence they went to Beer. That is the well wherefore the Lord spake unto Moses, gather the people together, and I will give them water. Then Israel sang this song, Spring up, O well, sing ye unto it. And the princes digged the well, and the nobles of the people digged it, by the direction of the lawgiver with their staves. And from the wilderness they went to Mattanah. And from Mattanah to Nahaliel, and from Nahaliel to Bamoth, and from Bamoth in the valley, that is the country of Moab, to the top of Pisgah, which looketh towards Jeshimon. Okay. So those are 10 verses. They're just an itinerary, all right? Israel moves from camp to camp. Oboth, Ayabarim, the valley of Zered, the other side of Anon, Beer. But the verse 16, it surfaces something beautiful, right? At Beer, the Lord tells Moses to gather people, and he's going to give them more water. And then comes a few songs. They're preserved in the book of Numbers, right? Spring up, a well, sing ye unto it. And then everybody goes to digging. Everybody digs, right? And that whole song, it's a song, a worship song. And Israel sings to the well. So the scriptures here, they're showing us that people are learning slowly to receive provision with gratitude rather than grumbling. I mean, at this point, they have to do the work. It's not just given to them, right? So the song at Beer is the answer to that whole complaint at Meribah. The journey is teaching them to sing and to give thanks for the blessing, even when they're made to work for it now, as opposed to just being given it. All right, let's continue on verses 21 to 32. And Israel sent messengers unto Sihon, king of the Amorites, saying, Let me pass through thy land. We will not turn into the fields and into the vineyards. We will not drink of the waters of the well, but we will go along by the king's highway until we be past thy borders. And Sihon would not suffer Israel to pass through his border. But Sihon gathered all his people together and went out against Israel into the wilderness. And he came to Jahaz and fought against Israel. And Israel smote him with the edge of the sword, and possessed his land from Arnon unto Jabbok, even unto the children of Ammon. For the border of the children of Ammon was strong. And Israel took all these cities, and Israel dwelt in all the cities of the Amorites, in Heshbon, and in all the villages thereof. And Heshbon was the city of Sihon, the king of the Amorites, who had fought against the former king of Moab, and taken all his land out of his hand, even unto Arnon. Wherefore they that speak in Proverbs say, Come into Heshbon, let the city of Sihon be built and prepared. For there is a fire gone out of Heshbon, a flame from the city of Sihon. It hath consumed Ar of Moab, and the lords of the high places of Arnon. Woe to thee, Moab, thou art undone, O people of Chemosh. He hath given his sons that escaped and his daughters into captivity unto Sihon, king of the Amorites. We have shot at them. Heshbon is perished, even unto Dibon. And we have laid them waste, even unto Nophah, and which reacheth unto Meribah. Thus Israel dwelt in the land of the Amorites. And Moses sent to spy at Jazer, and they took the villagers thereof, and drove out the Amorites that were there. So again, Israel, they're sending ambassadors. This time, Sihon, king of the Amorites, same courteous request. Let us pass. We're not going to touch your fields or their wells. We just want to pass directly through. Again, they get refused. But unlike Edom, he comes straight out to fight. And the Lord is with the Israelites, and they defeat him. The text is very matter of fact. Like it says that they smote him with the edge of the sword and possessed his lands. So it's important because the conquest of the promised land has begun. But not in Canaan, but on the east side of the Jordan. So Sihon's territory will become part of the inheritance of Reuben and Gad, right? And it didn't have to be. It just goes to show what happens when people stand up and fight against the Lord's people. So the promise, again, is starting to flow into reality. The same generation that wept at the spies' report is now its own next generation, and they are actually taking the land. It has begun. All right, and let me see, verse 27 through 30, there's a fragment of an old victory poem about conquest. That's what that is there. So the text that's preserving the song, right? The people who could not enter Canaan from the south are entering it from the east, and the geography of the inheritance is being written one battle at a time. So notice that, like they're entering the promised land from the east. There's some good Eden references there for you. Okay, let's go on to 33 to 35. And they turned and went up by the way of Sihon and Og, the king of Bashan, went out against them, he and all his people, to the battle of Edrei. And the Lord said unto Moses, Fear him not, for I have delivered him into thy hands, and all his people, and his land. Thou shalt do to him as thou didst unto Sihon, king of the Amorites, which dwelt at Heshbon. And so they smote him, and his sons, and all his people, until there were none left alive, and they possessed his lands. Okay. So yeah, they turn north, and they meet Og, king of Bashan. Now, Og is actually one of the giants, right? Deuteronomy 3, it tells us of his iron bedstead that was 9 cubits long, right? So the kind of giant that the spies were afraid of in chapter 13, right? Not too long ago. So the Lord tells Moses, Fear him not, I have delivered him into thy hand. So it's the same thing over and over again. Rebel not, neither fear. Then Israel destroys Og and his sons and all his people and possesses his land. And the chapter ends with Israel in possession of 2 kingdoms east of the Jordan. It's the same people whose parents, they shrank themselves into grasshoppers. And they've just defeated a literal giant, right? So the new generation, they've learned enough for now. Anyway, that is all of our reading for today, right? So we had 2 chapters. Miriam dies in Kadesh. The people complain about the water. Moses strikes the rock when he was told to speak to it, and the Lord tells him he will not enter the land. Edom refuses passage. Israel turns away. Aaron dies on Mount Hor with the vestments transferred to Eleazar in front of the camp. King Arad attacks. Israel destroys his cities, and the people complain again. Fiery serpents come into the camp. Moses lifts the brazen serpent on a pole. Everyone bitten who looks lives. Israel sings the song of the well at Beer. Sihon, king of Amorites, refuses passage. He's defeated. Og, the king of Bashan, a giant, is defeated. Conquest east of the Jordan begins. There's a whole lot to happen in just 2 chapters. Again, we could probably speak for hours and hours and hours about all this. So it's worth thinking on. Okay, but here's the thing. What does all this mean? So a couple of things that I think that this chapter is really doing. I mean, first is the obvious one. The brazen serpent is the most explicit type of Christ in the entire Pentateuch, the entire Old Testament. Jesus identifies himself with it in John 3. And so the doctrine, what's most striking about it is its simplicity. The remedy God provides for the deadly bite is not effort, it's not merit, so it's not works or your own goodness, right? It's just simply if you lift your eyes to what the Lord has already lifted up and live. It's that simple. That whole look, that's faith. The lifted thing is the cross. The life is eternal. The whole gospel is condensed into that one single gesture. How simple is that? And the tragedy the Book of Mormon warns is that it tells us that some of the Israelites refused to look because they simply thought it was too easy. Salvation by looking has always been the offense and the mercy of God. Next thing I think it's really doing here is, Moses' disqualification at Meribah, it teaches us something about the cost of misrepresenting God, right? Now, God, the water came either way. Like, the Lord was faithful to a faithless gesture, right? But the prophet who said, when he should have said the Lord, he lost inheritance in the promised land. So the leaders who claim credit for what only God does, even in moments that seem justified by frustration, they can do real damage to the people that they lead. That's why it's so important. So the rock was struck, but Moses was the one disqualified. Is that important? So remember, in all things, give glory to God. And also, I think the death of Aaron and the transfer of the vestments to Eleazar, that's really important, right? Because it shows us how the priesthood actually works. You don't get to just claim it, right? Aaron dies. The garments don't. The position doesn't. They go from one consecrated head to the next, and they do it in front of the assembled people. So the priesthood is not the property of an individual. It's not. It's just held in trust, and it's passed forward. Every prophet, every priest, every covenant servant, they're all mortal, right? But the work is not. And we've been given an example about how those keys and that chain of authority is passed down. God set it up, the plan. He built his church a certain way. It's beautiful. And so a couple of things that I are my takeaways, right, that I'm going to be thinking about for a while, is that, if you've ever been bitten by your own choice or by a complaint that turned poisonous in your mouth, by something that started small and seems to work way through your soul, doesn't matter. The bronze serpent, this is the chapter for you. And the remedy's simple. Just lift your eyes and see what the Lord has lifted up for you on the cross. It's that simple, right? That simplicity is mercy. Now, many in the camp died because they wanted to do something so simple. All I'm saying is, don't be one of them. Just turn your faith to Jesus. Look upon him and live. It really is that simple. And if you're any kind of leadership, that could be your family, your ward, your calling, your profession, just, watch your pronouns this week, right? Make sure you're giving credit where credit is due. The Meribah failure, it seems small in the moment, but really, Moses lost his temper. One moment, picked up that rod and hit the rock and called the people rebels. It looks like just a normal bad day, a simple slip up. But it cost him 40 years of patience and a reward. He still gets his eternal reward, but he didn't get this earthly one. So think about that. Where in your life are you taking credit for water that only God can bring forth? The cost, it compounds. Even when the water still flows, it's still going to come out. One final thing, Aaron's death is one of the most peaceful death scenes in the Bible, right? He climbs a mountain with his brother and his son. He takes off his vestments. He lies down. The work is finished. He's done what he's called to do, and he's gathered his people. Most of us will not get to choose how and when we die. But all of us can decide whether the work we are doing now is the kind of work we would want to be doing on the day that the mountain comes to us. So, live so that when the time does come to lay down the robes, the next generation is already standing and already ready to wear them. That's what I got. Now, tomorrow we're going to read Numbers 21 through 24. I know it's quite a bit, but we're going through the full Balaam cycle. Now, he's a foreign prophet hired to curse Israel, and an angel with a drawn sword in a vineyard path. There's a donkey that sees what the prophet can't, and 4 oracles of blessing that culminate in the star out of Jacob. So the messianic prophecy that the Magi will follow Bethlehem, we're reading about that tomorrow. Now, if you want to go deeper into today, right, this deep dive topic for today is Look and Live, the Brazen Serpent in Israel, Nephi, and John. I'm going to trace the whole bronze serpent through Numbers 21 into 1 Nephi 17, Alma 33, Helaman 8, and into John 3 and into the early Christian and rabbinic traditions that read the scene as the most explicit Christological type in the entire Pentateuch. It's fantastic. I love this particular article, and it's going to have all the notes, citations, and discussion questions that'll help you draw more out. Or if you're a Sunday school teacher, it might help you build your lessons with some more content and some more questions for the group. Anyway, the link's in the description. Go check it out. Also, don't forget that this song, Rebel Not Neither Fear, the third verse of the song is actually built around today's reading. So go get a listen, pay special attention to the third verse. It's all about water from the rock, Aaron climbing Hor, the priesthood passing, the fire staying sound. And yeah, so it's right here, the link to YouTube. Also, the MP3 download, go ahead and grab it. So links again, all in the description. So anyway, that's all I have for you today. I'll see you back here tomorrow. And until then, as always, I appreciate you all and thank you for choosing to spend some of your precious time to come listen with me.
Pulse in the desert, thunder in our feet. Name on the wind where the battle